Thank you for joining us for this News 8 Throwback Special. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. We're taking a look back at some of San Diego's museums over the years, many of them at Balboa Park, a true civic treasure. It's one of the busiest tourist attractions in the whole nation and just a great place to spend a day. It got its start hosting the 1915 Panama, California Exposition, and that was even before we came on the air, more than 75 years ago. But it didn't take us long to get to Balboa Park. Let's start with a look at the Natural History Museum back in November of 1956. From the start, one of the many interesting attractions in Balboa Park was San Diego's Museum of Natural History. Within the museum, literally thousands of exhibits and specimens of interest to persons of all ages. Botanical and zoological displays, bird eggs of every kind and color, and fascinating mineral and gem displays. In addition to static displays, the museum held regular nature walks and excursions to study habitats for plant life, sea life, birds, and freshwater life. Dr. George E. Lindsay was director of the museum and completed a voyage to Guadalupe Island, where he conducted research on fur seals. The exhibits were constantly updated. This is Mr. Lawrence Huey in the ornithology department, where hundreds of different birds are studied. Charles F. Harbison is seen in the entomology section, where all phases of insect life were examined. Also on the museum staff was 90-year-old Ethel B. Higgins, who cataloged thousands of leaves. Another of the museum's free services was weekly classes held for school-age children. Museum personnel provided youngsters with the latest literature and materials to aid them in their quest for knowledge in natural history. And just a few years later, a major new addition to Balboa Park that really reached for the stars. CBS 8 cameras got a sneak peek at the brand new San Diego Aerospace Museum in Balboa Park on February 14th and 15th of 1963. On display, a full-sized model of the glider John J. Montgomery flew at Otay in 1883. It reached more than 600 feet. Other displays included models of two other Montgomery planes and a replica of the Curtiss A-1, the U.S. Navy's first airplane, and the original XL engine, the first to break the sound barrier. On opening day, Vice Mayor Harry Scheidel did the ribbon cutting to officially open the museum, and the original script says, the museum's founders hope to make it a center of space and aeronautical activity in San Diego. It's now known as the San Diego Air and Space Museum. And Balboa Park has seen its fair share of changes and additions over the years, including a sports museum in the early 1960s, the San Diego Hall of Champions, with some familiar San Diego faces on display. And we've always looked to the stars with wonder and fascination, and a big, and I mean big, addition to the park brought those stars closer than ever. And speaking of the stars, the Star of India is every San Diego school kid's favorite field trip. Allison Ross takes us on a tour of all of them back in 1978 that finishes with some art appreciation.
It's electronic. There's a certain disorganization, which is apparent, I think, upon first looking at it. It's organized disorganization, perhaps, or should I say disorganized organization.
It isn't my cup of tea, especially.
I actually see life. I don't see cold, hard marble at all.
San Diego's cultural side, bringing opinions for every art piece, be it painting or sculpture. San Diego does have so much to offer culturally. I know people mainly come here because of the beaches or the weather, but we're going to show you that there's a lot to be found inside, and we've chosen 4 of the city's museums, each offering something different, something unique. For many years, San Diego citizens had no way of expressing appreciation to athletes who had won national or world renown. Then in 1961, the San Diego Hall of Champions and Sports Museum opened. Athletes that have left their mark in the history of sports cover the walls here, most of them from San Diego. Sport greats like Archie Moore, king of the light heavyweight since 1952. And Maureen Connolly Brinker, 3-time Wimbledon champion. Ted Williams, one of the greatest hitters baseball has ever known. A longtime player for the Boston Red Sox. It is agreed that a champion rises to the top of his sport by his own ability and perseverance, and those that live that through will never be forgotten. San Diego's Hall of Champions. Another of San Diego's museums is the Space Theater, looking into the future through a screen called the Hemisphere Screen, the only one like it in America. The Reuben H. Fleet Space Theater, on one of the largest screens in the world, is projected how far man has come in his world of flight and how far man can go in his plight to reach the stars.
There are so many wonders that we can show on this screen right now. There are things that are happening today to really try to bring the audience and project things that can happen in the future is part of a scheme. However, we're right now working on a new story called Weather. And we're going to see how weather influences our daily lives.
What we are showing you here are slide reproductions of movies and illustrations depicting the history of man's flight and his future with the stars. But when you are actually part of the audience, the screen gives you an effect of being completely surrounded by sound. Special effects and 10,000 apertures in the star ball give light to the dark screen, depicting the planets and the stars, the Fleet Space Theater and Science Center. San Diego's Maritime Museum, old world craftsmanship on display, giving the harbor a flavor of the past. Built of iron and by hand in 1863, no one knew how long she'd last. She has known mutiny and death in her 21 trips around the world. She has been aground and on fire. She is the Star of India, the oldest merchant ship afloat.
I've been on an old ship on the East Coast, and it kind of reminds me of the same type of thing. The berthing compartments, how they were in the olden days, and it's part of history.
Back to the world of contemporary art at San Diego's Art Institute, where artists have brought together a montage of expression. And really, all museums are forms of expression, a place where man savors where he has been, reflects where he is now, and reveals possibly where he is headed. Allison Ross, News 8.
We're headed to 1986, and the doctor was in at the San Diego Museum of Art. Dr. Seuss, that is. The occasion was the first retrospective display of Theodore Geisel's art from his then 60-year career. Honoring him was the reason. His clever work provided the rhymes. Lorraine Kimmel was there as he toured the display for the first time.
What are you doing? We're going to untie it and get ready to set her up, put her up. What's her? Well, a cat.
When Chris Profera began his work, he was being eyed closely from across the parking lot.
I want to see the cat first. I may not like it. Is that where the cat is? The
yes.
Cat on the
yes, on the truck.
On the truck.
Theodore Geisel has a special interest in the cat. He created it. Geisel is, after all, also known as Dr. Seuss. For the first time in his 60-year career, Geisel has decided to let someone mount a retrospective of his work.
It's an honor to you.
Yep. It certainly is.
They say that lots and lots of people are going to come. They say lots.
We'll see. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't.
Modest for a man whose 45 books have sold more than 100 million copies in close to 20 languages. Books with characters that didn't exist before Dr. Seuss created them. Characters with a humanity and a humor that have made children for the past 50 years demand of their parents nightly, read it again.
I'd completely forgotten about these.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, they're wonderful.
The curator of the show, Mary Stofflet, chose the 300 drawings and illustrations from Geisel's private collection and 2 other collections. The show covers his initial career in advertising, his trip through the world of political cartoons, but it focuses on the books he began writing close to 50 years ago. Books he says he wrote not for children, but for people.
Why is humor so important? Without humor, we'd have nothing, I don't think.
How did he come up with characters like a Grinch, a Preep, a Prue, or a Nurgle? He says he doesn't know. He has said, though, that writing for kids is murder. He seems to have revised that, though.
Any kind of writing is murder, if you do it properly.
Geisel turned 82 this year. That's quite likely why he decided to allow the museum in the town he's called home for many years mount this show. But there are other indications that Dr. Seuss is feeling the flight of time.
Dr. Seuss has been branching out. His latest book is called You're Only Old Once.
The dedication reads, "With affection for and afflictions with the members of the class of 1925. Is this book for children?" Well, on the back it says, "You buy a copy for your child now, and you give it to him on his 70th birthday."
Previously, when I did just kids' books, I would be invited every morning to go to have cocoa among the kindergarten set. Now I get invited to have martinis at old folks' homes.
Where would you rather be?
Somewhere in between, I don't know where.
While kids and older kids come to pay tribute to the cat's master, the Cat in the Hat will be keeping an eye on things. Lorraine Kimmel, News 8, Balboa Park.
That same year, 1986, a different kind of throwback exhibition. Dinosaurs arrived at the Natural History Museum. For kids especially, the prehistoric creatures were a huge, if intimidating, hit. John Clea was there even for some possibly dino-embarrassing moments.
They don't look a day over, say, 150 million years. They're creatures that lived in our zip codes when life was a bit slower paced.
Big, tall, ugly, and scary.
They've been trucked in from Portland and will do their dinosaur deeds later this month. Here's how they looked and sounded last year. Half life-size, but to a pint-sized kid, it's bigger than life. Donating the services of his crane company, Jim McMurrin, wearing his pith helmet, he has the dinosaurs strapped in place. You wouldn't want them running loose in Balboa Park.
Sometimes they're a little unruly, yes.
A hole had to be cut in the building to get these guys inside. Hard work and a new variation of a TV commercial. They really moved the tail for you.
No one knows for sure why these creatures disappeared from our world, but they're back, artificially healthy and happy. They never had much of a brain when they lived. It's computerized now. I wonder if they're embarrassed having their rear ends removed.
The walking, talking creatures are made in San Juan Capistrano. Can you imagine a swallow returning and seeing this?
It's tall and it's real weird and neat.
It cost $30,000 to bring in the exhibit, but admissions are expected to at least double. Just when you thought it was safe to go inside the museum again, along comes Dinosaur 2.
I think it's weird and scary.
So are mummies. And they're some of the most fascinating historical artifacts out there. And in 1988, an impressive exhibit came to what was then the Museum of Man, renamed the Museum of Us in 2020. While they may inspire scary stories and movies, mummies also communicate incredible details about humanity's past.
Mummies, Mayhem, and Miseries, the latest exhibit at the Museum of Man. And there's a lot to bone up on. Skeletal remains and mummies that give us a peek into the past and teach us about the present. The curator is Rose Tyson.
In forensic anthropology, they say the dead are our teachers.
So bones become our history books, records that are rich in detail. They tell us about once common diseases such as tuberculosis and leprosy, and they tell us about custom, the painful Chinese practice, for instance, of binding women's feet. And this 800-year-old mummy taken from a Mexican cave turned up in a Lemon Grove garage.
The mummy is of a young woman about 16 who may have died in childbirth because there are fetal bones inside.
And these mummies, 4 infants and an adult, were found near a burial cave in Peru.
Mummies can be likened to a time capsule because they have brought from the past to us information on their culture and their biology.
They made them pretty big, even back then. Around the turn of the century, this giant stood at 7 feet 6 inches tall, the result of a genetic abnormality. Now, as tall as he is, he wasn't the tallest. That record belongs to a Finnish man who topped out at 9 feet 5 inches. Some people think of museums as dry and dusty and dead, but not Rose Tyson. When she walks through this exhibit, she marvels at the body's resiliency and design and sees that beauty is bone deep. Andrea Naverson, News 8, Balboa Park.
The Birch Aquarium isn't exactly a museum, but it is a place to learn and to experience strange worlds many don't have access to. It is in many ways the crown jewel of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography's education and outreach efforts. Maria Solis was there for the grand opening in 1992.
Welcome.
Lois and Jim Gerber received an enthusiastic welcome and a gift as they passed through the gates. They are the first official visitors to the facility, which opened its doors this morning.
Look at that. Can you say hi to me?
The Stephen Birch Aquarium Museum made its public debut today to an impressed crowd. The new facility provides an amazing look at the underwater world.
It makes it feel like you're underwater, and seeing how it would look if you were wearing a diving mask and seeing it that way.
Well, this is great. I think it's really nice. It's huge. You can see a bunch of different fish throughout here.
It cost $14 million to recreate this look at the blue planet.
I call them jelly killers. Why? They sting people.
Not only are visitors introduced to 3,000 exotic fish and sea animals, the museum provides hands-on educational exhibits and a chance to learn about the research that goes on at Scripps.
I like it.
What do you like the most about it?
All the fun things you can do.
The Aquarium Museum had 1,500 visitors its first day of business, and it's expected to be mobbed this weekend. Admission is $6.50 for adults and $3.50 for children. Maria Solis, News 8, La Jolla.
All right, from underwater to just at the surface, surfing is synonymous with San Diego. Its lifestyle leaving its imprint on everything and everyone who lives or visits. Many of us, even some hardcore surfers, don't really know that much about surfing history. That's where the California Surf Museum came in. But in 1993, as Liz Purcell reports, the museum needed to find a new home because they were being kicked out of their Oceanside location for redevelopment.
Leroy Granis grabs his longboard and wades into the ocean. This is a daily ritual for him, and at age 76, he's still having fun. Granis has been riding the waves for more than 50 years, and he's been shooting them with his camera since 1959.
Well, that's what I meant with you in it. Where's a good one to put your name on?
Some of his photographs are up on the walls of the California Surf Museum across from the Oceanside Pier.
I saw a lot of these big boards in the big waves and got pictures of them.
They're part of an exhibit called The Golden Age of Big Wave Guns, and it features surfing legends like...
You haven't met Woody Brown? What's your name? Eric. Eric? Woody Brown.
Hi.
At 81, Woody Brown is living in Hawaii and surfing every week.
Yeah, I love the beauty of this water and the clouds and the sky and the mountains in the distance, you know. You feel close to, what, should we say God or nature or whatever you want to call it.
There's a lot of surfing history here. You can read about it, or maybe you can hear about it from surfers like Woody Ekstrom, whose first board in 1941 was his mother's ironing board.
I've talked to other surfers that have done the same thing. Yeah.
You started out on your mother's
ironing board. Yeah, La Jolla Shores.
The Surf Museum has been around for several years in different locations, but it's been here across from the Oceanside Pier for almost 2 years now. The problem is the site is in jeopardy because of downtown redevelopment. The people who run the museum are hoping for a spot in the new redevelopment project. They want to stay close to the ocean in a location where they're visible to beachgoers and where they can keep their eye on the surf. Liz Purcell, News 8, Oceanside.
And they got that spot. The city of Oceanside stepped up to help the museum find a new home, offering it an affordable space on Pierview Way. The Junipero Serra Museum in Presidio Park has been around for almost a century now, but about 30 years ago, the landmark was in dire need of a refresh. Jody Hammond reports on its renovation back in 1994.
The year was 1929, and the Junipero Serra Museum was under construction. And when the museum was completed, it dominated the hilltop over what we now call Mission Valley. There were no freeways or shopping malls then. But 65 years later, the museum is partly hidden by trees as commuters whiz by below. But even from a distance, decades of wind and weather were showing.
For the last at least 10 years, the place has looked like it had eczema. It's even from the freeway, the big chunks are visible falling off. And at last, they've gotten this place looking like it was meant to look, like a San Diego landmark.
For the past 3 weeks, the museum was closed while crews re-stuccoed the building's exterior. The city anteed up $54,000. You don't have to go far to see what the museum looked like before the re-stuccoing. There wasn't enough money to complete the job, so the museum arcade will be stuck with this eczema paint layer indefinitely. It will cost another $50,000 to finish the job, with the money again probably coming from the city. The museum attracts 30,000 visitors a year, most of them students, and it reopens Thursday. It sits just above the site of the original first mission in Southern California, now an archaeological dig. Inside, the museum is a tribute to San Diego's Spanish heritage. And now, outside, at least part of the building is ready to face the next century. Jody Hammond, News 8, Presidio Park.
So much to see here. Thank you for joining us on this News 8 Throwback Special. I hope you enjoyed this retro tour of some of San Diego's incredible museums. You can watch this and so much more on our free streaming channel, CBS 8+. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. We'll see you next time.